What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Me and Pop's Unplugged podcast. We appreciate you guys tuning in once again. This is episode 11, so follow along with us. We got a good one for you today. This is about boundaries, right? What boundaries actually are is what we're going to be talking about, including, what they look like, how to enforce them, and really just have a discussion about our experiences with setting boundaries and how a lot of people can't really differentiate or really enforce them because they're too worried about being liked. They want to avoid a weird conversation, uncomfortable situation. But we're going to dive a little bit deeper into that. And, any comments you guys want to leave, we appreciate it. So, Pops, we're going to start this off. Like, we know what boundaries actually are, right? But what does that mean to you?
Um, well, I mean, I would say that it's just basically parameters for the relationship or the dynamic, you know, um, kind of like almost like a rule, like, this is what I expect, expectations of, the interaction and, on both sides, like what each person expects of the relationship and, what's allowed and what's not allowed and, what you'll accept and not accept.
100%. No, I love that. That's a good explanation of it. I mean, to me, boundaries are just a standard you set for yourself, like you were saying, and in terms of what the relationship dynamic is and how it actually like operates. It's more of just an operating system and understanding of, you know, how you interact with people, basically. So, with that being said, right, here's a big one too. Why do you think a lot of people don't set them? This is huge for a lot of people.
I feel like honestly, the biggest thing is people don't know how to set them. And I feel sometimes that people don't even know what their boundaries are. And, in order to tell somebody else, like how can you expect somebody else to know something unless you tell them? It's kind of like the a closed mouth don't get fed, same type of, thing. Where if you're not setting them and letting somebody know, like, hey, this bothers me, or I don't like when you do this, or whatever, then that person's never going to know. So even if it bothers you, unless you communicate that to somebody, you can't. I feel like in life, a lot of times we expect people to just read our minds, and even though it might seem so obvious to somebody, some people don't catch on like that. Let's be real with it. There's a lot of people that aren't very bright in this world. And, I try not to deal with them type of people, but like
Fortunately,
it's a reality. Like some people like, you could punch them in the face with it and they still don't catch on.
yeah, they're like,
So I
what?
feel, yeah, I feel like, we don't communicate that to people enough. Like, hey, and again, you could do it in a polite way where like, hey, look, I really rock with you, this and that. But, when you say that, it kind of rubs me the wrong way, or, whatever way you want to, have it come across. But I feel like people don't communicate, their boundaries and what bothers them and what they'll tolerate and things of that nature. And then also, like I said, I don't think people have a clear definition for themselves sometimes on what their boundaries are and that their lives are you know and again this just a general thing. I'm not speaking of anybody or myself, but like a lot of people I feel don't they're all over the place themselves, so it's like to set a boundary, like they don't even have boundaries for themselves. And I feel like a lot of
Right.
times it starts there where if you have your own clear cut boundaries for yourself, and then you can be able to communicate that to somebody else and set boundaries within that individual relationship.
Yeah, I mean, it's stuff we talk about all the time on this podcast. Like, know thyself, do some inner work with yourself, and be like, okay, what are my standards? And that goes back to building your life the way you want it. And I mean, I really feel like they just, it's an uncomfortable situation. I don't think it has to be ultimately. Like, you could do it in a calmly manner, but I think when it comes to boundaries, there can be a big emotional charge, especially if it's like disrespectful or you had to check somebody a couple times already, two, three times, be like, hey, I really don't appreciate what you did. And then I feel like it becomes emotionally charged, especially when the person is persistently, not listening to what you say and they respond defensively. Now it's got that emotional charge to it.
Yeah.
I think I think a lot of people just will try and set the boundary initially, but a lot of people just continue to tolerate disrespect or say, hey, this is a boundary for me, but then the other person keeps infringing on that boundary and then it's never talked about again.
Yeah. And I feel like too, like you kind of touched on it, where we're so worried, I feel sometimes about the other person's reaction. And again, it depends on the community, just like they say in life, 80% of communication is nonverbal. So, if your mannerisms and the way you come off with it is, offensive, or, it has like an elevated tone, or, you're very demonstrative with, your mannerisms, then rightfully so, it might be taken, negatively. But if you,
Sure.
communicate it in a clear voice, non-threatening, and just like express your feelings on it, it shouldn't be taken that way. But I feel a lot of people in life aren't within the right place in themselves. Like they're not mentally or emotionally in the place that they should be. So no matter what way you communicate it, they're going to take it, they're going to get on the defensive, like, whoa, you know what I mean? Like they're taking it as criticism. And it might even be a little bit of criticism, but if you're doing it the right way, it's more constructive. Like, hey, for our relationship, if you could not do this and not, and somebody who's in a good place in their life, and I feel like they'll receive it the right way if it's communicated the right way. But there are people that no matter how you communicate it to them, they're going to get on the defensive. They're going to maybe, turn it around on you. Well, maybe it's because of you, and then they try to flip it. So it really depends on the dynamic of the relationship. Of course, it depends on the way you communicate it, but then it also depends on them, like how they receive things. And some people just don't
Right.
receive stuff like that well. Everybody wants to have I guess this certain persona that they think they personify, you know what I mean? Where, they, and I think it's natural. A lot of people have a grandiose view of themselves where, none of us are perfect, but a lot of people think they're perfect. So if you communicate something like that to somebody who feels like they don't do anything wrong, of course it's not going to be received right, because like, me? Wow, like I'm perfect. Like, what do you
Yeah.
mean? You know what I mean? So it
I
just
hate
really
those kind of
depends.
people.
Yeah, it really depends on, the person and the dynamic of the relationship. But, it's kind of a two-way street where it depends on how you communicate it and then how they receive it as well.
For sure. And here's the hard truth, right? Setting boundaries are going to cost you people in your immediate life. And I think that's the point that people don't understand. They're like, oh, well, I have a friend and, they might disrespect me or do X, Y, Z. And it's like, well, are they really a friend if they keep infringing on your boundaries, knowing damn well you already said what you needed to say? Now
Hmm.
you're just participating in the violation of your own boundary at that point. And I
Yeah,
mean, if
absolutely.
you keep adjusting yourself to others and letting them dictate what you're willing to deal with versus not deal with, you're causing yourself a disservice. You're going to lose yourself at the end of the day. But I truly believe that's the point. If you set a boundary, if that's truly your friend or like a solid, family member, whoever it may be, and they claim like they're truly there for you, they should fully understand and be like, hey, you know what, my bad. I did do that. I did say that. If it made you feel some type of way, I apologize. That wasn't my intention. Boom. You could just say it calmly and keep it pushing, you know?
Yeah, I feel like if the relationship is of value to that person, like again, no matter what it is, family, friend, romantic relationship, if they value the relationship and it's important to them and they're invested in it, And if you express something, then they should be willing and open to like, hey, I apologize. I didn't realize it bothered you. And you go forward. But some people just don't. And no matter how many times you tell them certain things, they're going to. It made me think of this. Like, if you remember Chappelle's show, where Charlie Murphy tells a story about Rick James, and he says
Oh
he's just
yeah,
he's a habitual line stepper. And that's how people are. Like, you're drawing a line, you're drawing a boundary. Like, hey, I don't like when you do this. And some people, I feel like, there's people out there in life that they're just antagonists where they're like, I don't really care about that boundary. So, hey, I drew this line, I'm gonna step over that. And I keep moving the line and they just habitually step over the line. So, and you kind of touched on it. If you're dealing with people like that, you're just going to drive yourself crazy and you're going to wind up in a fist fight or, some other toxics, even worse, you end up in jail over something because somebody just, habitually just keeps disrespecting you and your boundaries, and it's not worth it. And that's where the discernment comes in. Like, hey, this person, I tried to talk to them. And again, whatever the dynamic is, like I tried to talk to them, I kind of told them a few times, I don't like this. I don't, if you're going through that, like that person just needs to be cut out of your life
yeah.
because
Just
they're not
remove
good for
yourself.
you, because
Yep,
that stuff is frustrating. Where if you have to keep telling somebody now your emotions and it's creating anger within yourself, like I told this person, I don't like when they do this, and now I feel like it's a disrespect thing. And that's just going to, lower your vibration, make you angry, and again, risk something possibly, a physical altercation or something to happen. And, what is the point of that? Like, just remove that person from your life.
for sure. I mean, ultimately, people are just gonna take what you allow. If you allow them to continuously disrespect you and go over your boundaries, well, they're gonna get away with it. And
Yeah.
some low key too. A lot of people get off on that. There's no one really I ran with like that, whether it was a friend or acquaintance that was like, hey, I'm just gonna continuously be a line stepper and do that with me. But in passing, I met some people that I'm like, oh, that's probably that type of person. Let me stay away from them. And it's
Yeah.
crazy, man. Like you really got to think how insecure does that person have to be to continuously like get off on just rubbing people the wrong way or just seeing what they can get away with other people. It's like you were saying, like grandiose view of themselves, thinking they're God's gift to the earth. I You operate out of ego at that point. Like I don't even want to associate with you.
And it's funny too, when I was listening to you talk, it made me think of like, and I don't want to say women mainly because, it happens on both sides, but you hear a lot of women more like, oh, my boyfriend cheated or this, he cheated on me. And again, it goes both ways. There's guys that do that, there's women that do that. But I
Mhm.
hear a lot more women saying it, like, I don't know what it is, like he just keeps cheating, but they keep taking them back. And that's that boundary. Like in any relationship, no, everybody, if you're in a committed monogamous relationship, that boundary of, infidelity, that's like, that should
That should
be
be it right
the,
there.
yeah,
Like you're done.
exactly. Like that's the boundary line. Like that's unacceptable. But yet you see a lot of people, and again, men and women, you see them, they keep going out and they keep taking that person back and expecting different results, which of course is the definition of insanity. So like if you keep, and it's just whether it's that dynamic or something else. If you keep like in that situation, you take them back and then they cheat again, and then you make up, you take him back, and he's great again, and things are, and then he goes and cheats again. Like that cycle, you're allowing that cycle. So like your boundary is kind of like a revolving door. It's not a solid boundary.
Yep.
It's like a turnstile where it doesn't really matter, and they're just going to keep again habitually stepping over it. But if you allow it, how could you ever expect it to change? And now with the age of social media, you see these reels, you see different stuff, and then, like I see a lot more women like, I don't care how much money you got, I don't care how good looking you are, this and that. Like once you cross that boundary for me, and again, not just women, men and women, like that's it. Like I don't care what you have, what you bring to the table. Once you disrespect me and cross that boundary, that should be it. Because especially with that, like that's like the biggest one. You have other boundaries that, yeah, somebody might overstep it, and you talk about it, you try to fix it. But like that's like the ultimate disrespect in a relationship, a romantic relationship
Mhm.
anyway. Like once you cheat, you cross that ultimate boundary because you're committed to that. You two people have made a commitment to each other, and once that boundary's crossed, I don't feel like there's any way to get it back. But yet you see so many people that just keep, oh well, I'm gonna give them another chance, I'm gonna give her another chance, and they were drunk, and then they start to make the excuses, and
Right.
it's like you're not standing on your boundary, you're not setting that in stone. It's like again, it's like a like a turnstile, like that boundary is kind of like an imaginary line that just keeps moving. And once you do that, like people aren't going to change. They're going to, you know, whatever you allow them to do, they're going to do. So if you're firm with your boundaries, especially in that situation, once they do it, that's it. That should be there should be certain boundaries that can be flexible when you could talk about them, and if it happens two or three times, then you move on. But with like a that type of boundary, with like infidelity, that should be a one-time deal. Once you overstep that, it's it.
Sure. And I mean, this goes back to what you said, right? Like just knowing yourself. What are my boundaries? I don't even think people actually sit down and think, huh, well, what am I willing to deal with? What am I not willing to deal with? You know?
Yeah, exactly.
And that needs to be discovered within yourself, number one. And number two, I think it's a combination of things. Like we talked about on previous episodes, people are good pretenders, man. They'll put on that mask, tell you whatever you want to hear. Good sleazy salespeople,
Mhm.
really. And then, you throw emotions in there, you throw maybe like age, just youth, inexperience, not really knowing how to navigate specific situations, especially from a female perspective. Like I can imagine what they deal with too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't doubt it at all.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down, I feel like you just touched on it again. I talked about it earlier and you just said it. Like a lot of people don't even know what their boundaries are. And you have to kind of know yourself and what you will tolerate and not tolerate and what you want out of life, and what you don't want out of life. You have to have those clear cut definitions, those things defined for you,
Mm,
what you expect out of something. And of course, with certain relationships, there's going to be different expectations and, different boundaries, but you have to define them first and, express them to somebody. And I feel like, especially with a romantic relationship, that's the whole part of, and we touched on this before in other episodes. That's where like this whole, when I said about relationships being involved with just being just based on physical. People I feel jump into the physical part so quickly that you never have a time to sit down and get to know each other properly and start to define expectations and set boundaries where you've jumped right into the physical so quick and now you're learning everything else after the fact, and it's a lot harder when you get to know somebody and take the time to like truly know them and see how they are in certain situations and how they respond to things and how they respond to your expectations within the relationship. Then you could kind of like, okay, we haven't gotten to the physical part yet, but I'm starting to notice he or she does this or that. And then that's when you're like, hey, I really like you. I'm hoping this goes forward, but I wanted to let you know, like, when you do such and such, it kind of rubs me the wrong way. And then you're kind of setting, you're setting the standard for your relationship and your expectations, and then they can respond. But it's like, again, I feel like so many of these relationships, it's like right to the bed and right to the physical. And now you got that physical connection, and now that brings out the emotion. So now you're emotionally invested and physically invested. And then you're trying to learn about the person when you don't even know them. You're learning that secondhand on the fly and on the back end. It makes shit so hard. You know what I mean? So I feel that that's a big part. Like when you, especially in, obviously in the romantic relationship, people jumping in too quick with that stuff. They don't even know the person yet.
no, that's
And
huge.
how can you set boundaries when you don't even know this person yet? You
Yeah, you
know?
don't even know if there's alignment there to begin with, and you're just
Exactly.
skipping steps at that point. Like I feel like, most people should be focused on step one. They're jumping to step five, step 10.
Exactly.
Like they're so quick to pull the trigger on, just a relationship, even a friendship too. It doesn't really matter the dynamic. Like I think it's a good thing to even bring up like our standards, right? So like
Mm.
I'll go first. Like my standards, and this applies to the relationship, friendship. I'm very loyal, right? So that's a big one for me. Like infidelity, obviously, for most people, I feel like that would be a deal breaker, right? You
Yeah.
know, and that goes hand in hand with effort. Like if it's one sided, like if I find myself one day, I'm like, you know what? I feel like I'm doing a little too much and it's not being reciprocated. Um, that's a big thing for me, right? So effort, loyalty, um, reliability. Can I call you and count on you for certain things? Like, yo, bro, hey man, I'm having a tough time. Can we just have a normal conversation? It doesn't have to be anything crazy, but just be like, hey man, I'm having a hard time over here. And, men don't do that enough, especially if it's a male friendship. Um, they're looking at it like, oh, you're part of the competition. Why would I help you? Women got that right. Like if their friend's going through a breakup for whatever reason, they have a whole group chat and they're probably on the phone for hours, like, hey, we got you. But men don't fucking do that. I can't call up a friend and be like, yo, bro, I'm going through some shit. Like, you got a second to talk. And even if I can, more than likely they'll use it against me at a later date. And I hate when fucking people do that. So they weaponize your boundaries as well. And they'll use it as ammo against you in a future situation. I've dealt with that in particular, which is fucked up. Like I'm a very kind person, but I'm at the point where I just don't give a fuck. Like if I have to tell you once or twice, it's done. Like I'm just gonna remove myself from the situation. And people need to understand too, whoever's watching, like you don't need to say the same shit 10 different times. If it's even to that extent, just step away. For friendship, relationship, even family member. You know, I got a saying, blood's thicker than water, but blood doesn't always make you family, right? So if we have a firm understanding of that, you definitely have to make sure you're setting the boundary in an appropriate way. And if you got to say it 10, 20, 30 times, remove yourself from the situation because it only takes one time. Then you take action at that point. So that goes back into actually enforcing the boundary and standing on business.
Yeah, if you're saying something 10 times, then clearly you're not being heard,
Yeah.
or you're what you're saying isn't important to them. And if that's the case, then it's a one-sided relationship. And what is the point at that? But no, I mean, I agree with everything you said. And so you were listing standards that, as far as a relationship. Now we'll be talking a romantic relationship, or we're talking just any relationship in general.
I mean, if we want to orient it more towards actual relationships, I'm looking at loyalty, I'm looking at effort, I'm looking at consistency, I'm looking at mental stability. Like, am I dealing with somebody that's, can't even deal with themselves? Am I dealing with somebody that has a mental disorder? Am I dealing with somebody that is volatile? Like real shit,
Instead of mental
real fucking
disorder.
shit. You don't know,
Well, I
especially when you're
know.
first getting to
It's
know
just funny
somebody.
the way you said it, like hearing you say mental disorder. It's just funny.
Yo, that's real shit. I promise you. Because a lot of these
Yeah,
people just, they come off real normal, and then you get a little bit deeper, and you're like,
yeah,
oh shit, like,
yeah. Ain't that the
schizophrenia,
truth?
like, you
Well,
never
that
know.
goes back to what we were saying a couple episodes ago when I'm like, you're meeting a representative of somebody when you first meet
Yeah,
them. It's the customer service version. Like they come across, real sweet and you're real nice, especially if you're talking a romantic relationship. There's so many times I must have, in the last, before I met Angela, where I would literally tell myself or tell other people, like, yo, I think this is the one. And then think about that like months later, be like, what the hell was I thinking? But, I was going into it with, the right intentions.
right,
And then, so of course I'm thinking that because I'm being genuine. And then, in hindsight, looking back months later, be like, man, I was nuts. Like, but it really wasn't my fault because this person came, disguised as somebody else. So it's like, what was I supposed to think? But on the back end, again, like things reveal themselves, and you're just like, what the hell? Like, this isn't even nowhere near the person that I, was introduced to or whatever. But yeah,
Listen,
it's crazy.
that's why
Anyway,
discernment is huge.
yeah. Anyway, as for my standards, I mean, if we're talking again, like you said, romantic relationship, my standards are the biggest one for me is the biggest ones for me are like honesty and trustworthiness. So, and when I say that, of course, honesty, I don't want to build with somebody long term. And, there's a bunch of lies. And again, they're painting themselves as one person and they're another person. So
Right.
that's number one. But then the trustworthy thing is, especially with my schedule, like I work 2 to 10. So I don't want to be with somebody where I'm at work and I gotta wonder if they're out creeping around or got somebody over the house and just things
Yeah.
like that. And that goes back to the whole infidelity thing. But nobody wants to, because that'll drive you absolutely insane. So those are huge. And then you kind of touched on it, consistency, reliability, and then, a certain standard of morals, like certain things that you live by. Like,
Yep.
and again, for myself, years ago and for most of my life, I was always trying to cut corners and scam and scheme, do things dishonestly. So it goes back to the honesty part where I don't live like that anymore. And I don't want somebody that's always trying to scam, especially if it's something that's illegal. I don't want to deal with that. And I'm just trying to live honestly. And I don't want somebody that's always trying to buck the system. And, I get it when we're younger, but now at, my age, like, I don't
Yeah.
want to deal with that. So, those are a lot of the big ones, respect, honesty, trustworthiness, um, and then, like I said, your morals and,
Right. Character.
consistency. Yeah,
Are
your
you a good
character
person?
and then your consistency. Like consistency, I said it before, is everything. You have to show me, not tell me,
Right.
and be consistent on a regular basis. And then again, that kind of sets the standard for the relationship where what to your each other's expectations, like because this person consistently shows up, and if they just go missing all of a sudden, like that's a red flag. I said it before, like in my own relationship, we're almost at 2 years and we've never missed one day talking to each other, even before we lived with each other. Like, and if there was something that I had to do or vice versa on her end, we would text or call each other like, hey, I'm going to be tied up or I'm going to be unavailable. Like, we
Right.
let each other
Just a
know,
little
and we were
common courtesy.
consistent. And that in itself sets boundaries for the relationship. So then, after you're a year in and you're consistent every day, and then somebody falls off the face of the earth for 2 days, now, that boundary has been crossed because a standard has been set. And, those are red flags that people ignore or just make excuses for because they're so invested in other areas. But like, those are things you got to pay attention to. And if that boundary's crossed, it'll probably be crossed again later.
For sure. And no one's ever that busy. I mean, let's be real. It's fucking
Yeah.
2026. Everyone has their phone on.
Yeah.
Everyone is reachable at some point. So if you can't even send a common like text, hey, you know what? I'm going to be tied up today. My fault. Just giving you a heads up. If you don't hear from me, boom, boom, boom. That takes
Yeah,
10 seconds max.
absolutely. Yeah,
So
I can stand that. Like, oh, I didn't see your message.
yeah.
No, you
Or
see me.
I fell asleep right when I got home. Like, stop, bro. Like you just bullshit.
Yeah, but again, that's where, setting boundaries like that should be of course, in a romantic relationship. Like in a friendship, I get it. Like two guys, like, oh, I didn't see your text. Like that shit's gonna happen.
Yeah, that's not a
But
big
like
deal.
in a committed romantic relationship, like those things are unacceptable. And the more you accept them, the more they're going to step over that line, and your standard has basically been crushed, and they don't care about your standard.
For
You
sure.
know?
And I like the ones that you said about honesty and respect. I mean, that kind of falls under one umbrella for me: honesty, respect, morals and values,
Yeah,
and then alignment in terms of like what we want long term too. Do they want to get married? Do they want to have kids? Do they want to have a house? Like what does the whole situation look like, and what's their end game? Because
yeah,
if I'm sitting here like, oh, okay, they might not want kids. That might not align with
yeah.
me. Whatever your situation is, like everybody's different. But
Yeah, and I
I
know that
think
you dealt with that in a past relationship where, they said that they wanted kids and then, 6, 8 months
right,
in, then they're
change the
talking and
tune.
the tune changed.
Right. And I'm at the age now, like I'm just wasting my own time. And
Yeah.
like we talked about, good pretenders, right? They'll tell you what you want to hear until
Hmm.
it's too late, or you got all this time invested. Now they're changing their tune. So it's
Yeah.
just funny how that works, but shit happens too. I mean,
Yeah. And
they're a
real
good
quick,
person. I don't wish them ill will.
yeah, real quick, I wanted to go back to something you said earlier about,
Yeah.
like, say, for instance, like a guy friend, and you like, hey, bro, I need to talk, and then you tell them, and then you said, then they're going to throw it in your face, and it's funny too, because that made me think of like I've had situations like that, and they might not throw it in your face maliciously, but a lot of people do this. They'll take like something that you told them in confidence like that and they'll make a joke about it. Like for instance, like say you call
Yeah.
up, you had like a relationship problem, and they won't, say it maliciously, but they'll be like, "Oh, what? The next time you call me crying about your girl, like." And to me, that's even worse because now
That's a
you're taking,
betrayal. That's
yeah,
that's
you're
not
taking
even
my trauma,
right.
what shit that I went through and told you in confidence and was vulnerable with you, and now you're taking it and you're making light of it, which really tells me that you really never cared in the beginning and wanted to say like, stop being a bitch or something like that, but didn't have the balls to say it. So now you want to make light of it and bring it up as a joke. And then if I react to that, they're gonna be like, "Oh, I'm only playing with you." And like to me, that's even worse because you have people that will take shit that you told them in confidence and moments of vulnerability, and then they'll use it against you, but do it in that sly way of making a joke out of it, and then say, "Oh, I'm just breaking your balls," or whatever. And to me, that's even worse. Like, what kind of friend is that?
They're not a friend. That's the answer.
Exactly.
And you know what? I always say this: there's always truth in jokes. So you pay attention to what
Oh,
people say
absolutely.
too. And whatever little stabs they might say. And you know what? I got a story for this too. And this is it's kind of vulnerable. It's tough for me to share, but it's funny looking back on now. I remember this is years ago. I literally had to go into a job interview with a black eye. Unfortunately, me and Quinn ended up fighting years ago. We were at the casino,
Mhm.
we were gambling, we were drinking a little bit, and it was a good time. And then, shit happened, and me and him ended up fighting. He snuck me with a left. I ended up having a black eye. I was driving home drunk. It was a terrible fucking night. So
Mhm.
this is years ago, and I remember I came home. I had a roommate at the time. I'm not going to mention his name, and it was just such a fucked up night. And I had to go in for a job interview that Monday. I remember it was like a Friday or Saturday night, and I'm like, what the fuck? And I came home and I just felt really fucking bad, man. I had a black eye. It's all fucking swollen. I'm drunk as shit. I don't even know how I just made it home. And, not condoning driving drunk, but again, it was just a fucked up night. So I get home and I'm feeling real defeated. Like I just fought my brother, who, it's the last person I want to fucking fight and get into an altercation with. And I remember just feeling so defeated. I'm like, fucked up, man. I'm like, and he's out there and I'm just venting to him. And I'm like, yeah, bro, like I remember saying I'm in the middle of like being like, yeah, man, I just feel like, a fucking failure. And before I could even say failure, he's sitting there like, oh, you just feel like you're gay? And I'm like, bro, this is like a tough moment for me. And I'm like, you really just fucking said that? I didn't say it out loud, but in my head, I'm just like looking at him. But right there, I should have set the fucking boundary. I should have set the boundary, looking back on it, and be like, you know what, bro, fuck you. And if dude's watching right now, that's 100%. And it took me years to figure out he was not truly a friend. And that's
Yeah.
like the point of weaponizing, things, or just people making fun of your own misery. Like a lot of people like to see you do good until you're doing better than them. And a lot of people take pleasure. Let's keep it a buck. A lot of people take pleasure in seeing you fail and seeing
Mm.
you have unfortunate situations. So it's just fucked up, man, because my standard is I'm a very loyal friend and I'm a very loyal partner, especially if I get into a relationship with somebody like fiercely. And I have a very kind heart. I have a rough exterior, but now I'm at the point like if I notice some fuckery, I'm gonna call it out immediately. Be like, yo, that was fucked up. When I was younger, I would be like what we're talking about. I'd be like, oh, I don't want to cause conflict, or oh, I don't want to cause tension. Now I'm like, dude, fuck that. Say what you need to say. Because if you don't, it's going to continue and it's going to be a detriment to your life to a certain degree. I don't care what it is. So that's
And
just a little
and
story.
well, I appreciate you, telling that. And there's nothing wrong with being vulnerable. You're talking about your
100%.
life. And I feel like what you just said at the end, like when you were younger, what you would accept that you won't accept now. And that's because, you're older, you've had more experience, you've had more situations happen to you, but also because you're working on yourself, like your internal self, and dealing with past traumas and different ways of uh, thinking. Your whole
Mhm.
mindset has changed. You're working on your core self, so now you're understanding yourself more and what you will accept and won't accept, and it just shows you growth. So that's a good thing. And again, it goes back to what I was saying about the joking part. Like he tried to make light. And the other part of that that makes me think is like certain, especially this happens a lot with men. You kind of touched on it earlier that women are good with that. If their girlfriend that they care about is going through something, they rally around each
Oh,
other,
yeah. Hmm.
and that's a beautiful thing. Men, I feel that they're caught up in ego so much
Oh,
and
it's
the
terrible.
macho thing, and like in that vulnerable moment, that story that you were telling, that guy probably wasn't able to deal with, you know, that emotional setting. Once feelings and start coming up, certain guys are just like meatheads, like, oh, come on, man, they sounded gay. Like, because that's their defense mechanism. They
Right.
can't deal with, hardcore vulnerability and emotions. So anytime that comes up, the defense mechanism kicks in and they got to make a joke or they got to say some meathead, saying or whatever. And again, that comes with growth. Some guys are like that. They're 60 years old and they're still a meathead that can't deal with, emotions and vulnerability and stuff like that. But as we get older, we see that stuff more, and you have more experience. So yeah, I don't know who you're talking about, and I'm not asking for names, but yeah, I mean, he was never a friend. Because in a moment where you needed him, he showed you that he wasn't a real friend. And,
For
and
sure.
again, women are great with that. They really are. Like even I watch it with Angela. Like she has certain friends. They might not talk, regularly. They'll talk like maybe once a week, whatever. Because we all have our lives going on. But once like one of her good friends, like she'll tell me like, hey, I got to call so and so. Like she's been going through some stuff. I want to make sure she's all right. I want to reach out and make sure she's okay, and they always check in with each other. And then if it's like a major thing, man, they're on the phone for hours. Like you said, they rally around each other and pull each other up. So, that's a beautiful thing. And that's something that as men, we kind of been conditioned to like that's unacceptable. And it's like the whole men don't cry thing, that like we're not supposed to do, but that's all
Yeah,
bullshit.
like you're just a fucking robot. Just sit down,
Yeah.
comply. Like what the fuck is that, bro?
It's just a
First off,
bullshit
if you
a bullshit mentality, all driven off of ego and pride, like, that certain men can't bring themselves to tell another man they love them or, I care about you or this or that, and, be there for them. Like their ego and their pride won't allow them to do it. And
man, it's fucking weird, dude.
they kind of been programmed that way, over the course of their lives by the people that they've been around. And it's screwed up. That's why
I
I don't
mean,
really,
being
you know me. My circle's very small. I only,
same.
mess with a few people, mainly family, obviously my relationship, you and your brother, and I got a few close friends that I deal with, and even some of them, like I'm not knocking them, but I kind of know who I could go to and who I can't go
Right.
to. Because some
You know who
guys,
you can go to for certain things, for sure.
yeah, yeah, like I know who I could go to, you know, if I'm really like down or something like that. And then I know who I could go to who's like going to make me laugh. And, like I know who's who. And, I take them for what they are. You know what I mean? Like like they say, when somebody shows you who they are, believe them. And so I kind of know the people that I deal with, like what to expect from them. Like we kind of have our own, boundaries set in our personal relationship dynamic.
Mm. No, I love that. And I mean, it's just so crazy, man. People are fucked up. Seriously. Like,
Yeah, there's
people take
definitely a lot of them, you
people
know?
take kindness for weakness. I mean, first off, if you're a grown ass man and you can't even express boundaries, number one, and you can't even deal with your own emotional feelings and stuff like that, just reeks insecurity. I mean,
Yeah.
can you not like process what's going on in your own mind, let alone if someone, an apparent friend, comes to you in confidence and we're talking real shit? Like that's crazy to me. I mean, I'm not going to knock anybody's individual growth, but especially when it happens to you, it pissed me off. I mean, it still kind of pisses me off because it's just I would never do that to a friend,
Yeah.
but that's my standard, and that's a mistake I made. It's having my own standard and holding somebody else to my standard. When
Hmm.
you got to understand, not everybody's going to do that. Not everybody has the same standard as you. So it could be frustrating at times, but you know that's kind of going back to the story that I shared. But it's
And I
crazy,
and
man.
I
Discernment
feel
is huge.
as to what you were just saying, I feel like we have to realize a lot of times, well, most of the time, in situations like that, it's not a you issue. Like perfect example with that story, it wasn't a you thing. That just was a them thing where they weren't at a place in their lives where they were able to have the capacity,
To
and
deal with that.
empathy and
Right.
stuff to deal with that, or weren't mature, emotionally mature enough to deal with that. And you didn't do anything wrong. Like you were in a situation, like you said, you had just got done fighting with your brother, you were drunk, you felt defeated, you just had a rough day. And more than anything, what you needed was for him to listen and not even really say anything, but he didn't have the capacity, the emotional capacity and the empathy to deal with that situation. So, his inadequacies showed up. So that's more of a him issue than it is a you issue.
Oh, for sure.
Um,
And it's more wisdom as you get older too. Like, it was my fault for even opening up. I should have known that that specific individual didn't have the capacity to even deal with this situation, let alone open up and
yeah,
talk about all this other shit. But it is what it is. I mean, that's how we
yeah.
learn too. A lot of it's just
And
trial and error and figuring out your own standards.
since, like you were telling a story, like I want to tell a story, and I'm not going to get into names or specifics, just
Yeah,
like you
you don't
didn't.
have to.
But I've had, and there's actually a few of them, but there's one in particular. Um, someone close to me, and kind of I didn't realize it until I started doing the work on myself, a few years ago, and like really becoming who I need to become. That I did again, like for all these years, it was happening, and I never could really identify it. But once I started coming into my own and becoming who I'm supposed to become, I started to notice patterns that every time I would talk to this person, I would leave the conversation and feel worse. And it wasn't even in person. And this is the weird thing. I kind of finally like pinpointed it when I was on the phone with this person. And when they called, I was in a good mood prior to them calling.
Right.
And then pick up the phone, have like a 20-minute conversation. And I noticed that the whole time it was just complain, 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 negative, negative, negative. And like, I remember hanging up the phone. And at that very moment, I was like, I could feel like the negativity, even though the phone call was over. I
Yeah.
felt like the negativity just encompassing me, like where now I felt negative. And like that whole energy is transferable thing is
For
a real
sure.
thing. And I had not, and this is somebody that, I've dealt with my whole life. And I didn't realize it until that moment. And I was like, holy shit. Like, and I kind of started to set a boundary after that, that I'm not going to allow you and your negativity and your bullshit to transfer to me.
Yeah.
And the weird thing is, you and I have talked about it. We talked about it earlier before we started, but I never even communicated that to this person. And the reason being is because we talk about you have to communicate it, is like certain people don't receive things like that well. And I know this person very well and knew it wasn't going to be received well. So now my boundary is kind of a boundary that I created for myself, where I might not have communicated, but I set my own personal boundary with this person, that my access is now limited. You have limited access to me
As it should
because
be.
every time it's a negative vibe comes from it. And I don't want to feel like that. And even though, I might feel a little bad that I have to limit my access, I have to do that for my peace, because I'm not going to allow you to transfer your negative energy and your bullshit onto me. That's not fair to me, and that's not fair to my life. So, as much as I would like things to be different with this person, and I would like to address it, and maybe I'm wrong, but I'm 99% sure I'm right, that it wouldn't be
Yeah.
received well.
It's just
So
going to be a
rather
waste of
than
your breath. Yeah.
yeah, so rather than even go into that whole thing, now I just limit my access. And again, no, I'm not saying anybody in particular, but it's something I had to do for myself, for my own peace, and my ultimate happiness.
Fucking right. I mean, which you should too. And I'm glad you talked about the peace factor because, there's so much peace in my life at this point that I can actually look back and I can do further inner work with myself and being like, damn, I allowed this in the past. And, certain memories just pop up and be like, how did I let this person do that? Or, why didn't I speak up when I know I should have? And it's just redefining, you know, what you're willing to tolerate from other people. And I mean, again, like once that peace comes into your life and you're able to reflect on past situations and stuff like that, it's a true blessing because you can now set a new standard for yourself and be like, you know what? Hey, moving forward, it's all positivity. I'm going to do this moving forward. And if someone falls short, despite how amazing they may be, or, they're an awesome person, it's like, listen, you got to stand on business and be like, hey, I'm not willing to tolerate this. I wish you well. Deuces.
Yeah, and I touched on it a little earlier. I feel like the biggest part of that is just learning yourself, learning what makes you happy, what doesn't make you happy, and doing like internal work on yourself and really getting in touch with your inner self,
Mhm.
and learning that it allows you to have that discernment of like, hey, this person's not right for me. This person is right for me. And I feel like that's the biggest core thing, is really getting in touch with yourself, not just, your likes and dislikes, but, dealing with what triggers you, what doesn't trigger you, like what makes you happy, what interrupts your peace, and just doing the internal work to really get to know yourself. Like knowledge of self is everything, because we're all flawed. We all have, different aspects of our personality, and our ways that aren't perfect. None of us are perfect, but like really knowing yourself, like and it kind of goes into, me and you touched on it a little bit, where setting personal boundaries, like for myself, even with the way I've changed my life around. Like before, like say guys at work, they want to, like on a Friday every now and then, like, oh, we're going out to get drinks and stuff like that. Like the old me, like, yeah, party, let's go, social, because I'm a social person. Like
Right.
I would have been, I'm 100 times out of 100, years
I'm
ago,
there.
I'm in.
100%. Yeah.
And wouldn't have took into account that now I live in Jersey, I work in Philly, that I want to go to a bar, have drinks, and then have to drive home, risk getting, number one, arrested
Yeah.
or killed in an accident or in an, whatever. And then even if I don't, I get pulled over, get caught drinking and driving. Now my license taken. Now how do I get to work? Like I never would have thought about certain things like that. So now, if I was to, be asked that, and it has come across, since I've been at my job, like, hey, we're going out for drinks. You guys have fun. Like that's not for me. You know what I mean? Because I set boundaries for myself. Like I don't cross that. Like I'm not going to risk everything that I have to lose over going out to have a drink with a bunch of people that I see every day at work anyway. That's number one. And I
For
might want to
sure.
go, even if I'm not drinking, go to socialize with them, but I'm not going to put myself in that situation. And then also, say I go to a bar and I'm not even drinking, but these guys I work with or whoever, they start getting drunk, they get in an argument with somebody else,
Yeah, there's a fight,
especially nowadays,
whatever the
everybody got a
situation may
gun.
be.
I could
Yep.
wind up getting in a fight, getting shot over somebody else's bullshit that I'm not even involved in just because I put myself in that circumstance. So, setting boundaries with stuff like that. And I've had to learn that about myself and even for the recovery aspect. Like certain people, I might not get high anymore, but in the beginning, like when before I really got into it, like I had a little relapse years ago, and that first time I got sober and had like a year sober, I would still put myself around people that were getting high. And it's just like they say, like you keep going to a barbershop, you're going to end up getting a haircut. It's the same thing where I'm not getting high, but I keep hanging out with people that are doing
Yeah.
drugs in front of me and stuff like that. So I had to set boundaries for myself so that like this is a line I can't cross. Once you start doing something that doesn't resonate with me, I'm out. Or I'm not going to put myself in that situation to begin with because I know what's going to come. And I feel like that's important too, just setting personal boundaries for yourself, like not even with a relationship dynamic, but just within yourself. Like this is something, a standard or a boundary that I set for myself and I'm not crossing that because you know what comes with it on the other side. And I just think that comes down to, as I was saying in the beginning, knowing yourself, like
Yep.
really tapping into yourself, working on the core stuff, and knowing, like, hey, I'm not. And again, this is because of my flaws. Like, I know me. Like, I put myself in a certain situation, I get comfortable, I get complacent, and then the negative side starts to come out. So, if we set that standard for ourselves and like have that boundary of I don't go on the other side of this, then nine times out of 10, like, you're going to be successful.
Yeah, you're set up for success at that point. And I love how you talked about the personal boundaries too, because that's not talked about enough. We're usually so focused on like, oh, this person did me wrong, and how I'm going to go out socially and handle certain situations and stuff like that. But no, I mean, that's how confidence is built. That's how trust with yourself is built, and self-esteem too. You're like, hey, this is a boundary. I'm gonna wake up every day. I'm gonna go to the gym, whether it's meal prep or whatever your personal goals are. That's how confidence is built, and that's how trust with yourself is built too.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Well,
anybody
it
who
comes
struggles,
it's
go ahead.
discipline. You
Right.
have to discipline yourself that, hey, this is a non-negotiable within myself that, I don't do this. And even though I might want to because a bunch of people I know and it sounds like a good time, that's your old life pulling you back, like trying
Yep.
to pull you back over and having certain disciplines. Like there's certain things I do every day. Like every day, of course, when I wake up, the first thing I do is pray. And like that, you start to do the positive things and having that discipline, then, you kind of create the more, your life starts to roll on a positive. You create that positive momentum and have those type of things that you do on a regular, set that standard, and then you have certain boundaries. And like with that, like one boundary is I'm not going to not pray. Like that's a standard I set for myself and a certain boundary. Like I'm not going to cross over to the other side where I'm not praying today. I don't feel like it. There's so many times that I don't feel like praying and it's not convenient, but I've created a certain standard and a boundary that I won't cross of not doing it, that that discipline of being disciplined to do it every day. And it goes into, like you were saying, with working out, certain things that we do on a positive that just create that standard for yourself and that non-negotiable, like I have to do this. Like and it's created positivity and a positive momentum in your life. And the outcome on the other side is usually, success.
Yeah,
So,
because you're consistent.
excuse
You
me.
just built the whole blueprint for yourself, basically.
Yeah,
I mean, as long as you follow that, it's just a guideline to, achieve everything you want to achieve. Nah, I love that.
yeah,
Hell yeah, man. So that's going to wrap it up for episode 11. We appreciate you guys. Pops, I really like this episode for sure. And I think
yeah.
a lot of people are going to resonate with this.
And real quick, I just wanted to say, as people who might have watched last week, I was a little under the weather, and I really appreciate you and Quinn, my youngest son. Appreciate Quinn stepping in and the things that you talked about. And you guys talked about gratitude, with me and your mother, especially your mother, and she deserves that. So I just wanted to real quick say I appreciate you guys and just wanted to kind of mention the things that I'm grateful for. Obviously, I'm grateful for you and your brother. I always say like I've done a lot of wrong in my life, but I definitely got two things right with you guys. So, I'm very grateful for you guys. And you guys touched a lot on, the stuff with your mother. And as you know, other people may not, but me and your mother don't talk anymore. And, there's reasons for that. And a lot of them are me. I'll own that. But I will say that even though we don't talk, I'm eternally grateful to her because she, day in and day out, did what she had to do with you two, especially when you were younger. And I was in and out of the situation and, not there the way I should have been. She always stepped up and did what she had to do. And, all through all my bullshit, that was one constant, in you guys' lives. And, I'll always be grateful to her for that. And, she deserves that. And then also, I'm grateful for just the things I have, today in my life
Oh, yeah.
through doing the work and turning my life around. Like my life has done a complete 180, and I'm eternally grateful for that, for my faith, for my discipline, for recovery, and all the people that, have helped me along the way. And I'm just grateful for my life right now. And, our dynamic, me, you, and your brother, the relationship that we had, because as I said, you know, I did a lot of in and out, you know, getting high, going to jail, just running the streets, being worried about women and things like that. So, I've done a lot of wrong in my life. And, me and you went through it where, we didn't really talk. You and Quinn dealt with it differently. Me and Quinn kind of always stayed in connection, and he would be pushing me to do better. And, for you, you had to kind of step away. And I'm not saying that's wrong. Like you both dealt with it differently. But I'm really grateful for what we have today. Like to have the relationship that the three of us have is amazing to me. And I'm, like I said, so grateful for that. And then to see you guys both blossoming into the men that that I knew you were and that you are becoming is just, it's something I can't even put into words. So I just wanted to touch on that because I wasn't around last week. And, I just wanted to state, my gratitude. And then lastly, I would say for Angela, you know, my partner that I met, and she has really changed me even more for the better and taught me a lot about relationships and just made me a better person. And it's not always comfortable. Like she calls me out on my bullshit because, as I said, I have a lot of bullshit with me. I've
Which she
gotten
should.
better. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've gotten better and I've changed so much, for the better in my life. And but I still, just like anybody, I still got some shit with me. And she's so quick to call it out. And I need somebody like that because I get very comfortable and complacent in life with certain things. I am disciplined, but there's areas that I get comfortable in. And she does not allow me to get comfortable. Like she calls
Mm.
me instantly out on my shit. And she's taught me a lot. And, again, it's all for the better. It might not be what I want to hear in the moment, but it's been a blessing, for all those things, man. And, my job, um, to be where I'm at and have a career that's actually a career and pays good money and all. Like these are the things that I'm eternally grateful for. And I just wanted to state that because I felt like that's the topic that you guys kind of dealt with last week. And, again, I was under the weather, so I do apologize, but I think you guys did a great job. And I just wanted to express my gratitude.
Hell yeah. No, I appreciate you sharing that. I mean, it's nothing but love. I mean, shit happened in the past. Was it fucked up? All right, yeah, but I mean, that's just a testament to our willpower and strength, just as people in a family. Like we were able to overcome that, and we're in a good place now. So that's all I'm fucking worried about. No more
Yeah,
bullshit. No more fucking
we've come out the other
chaos.
side.
Yeah, exactly. Hell yeah. Well, I love you, Pop. I appreciate you sharing that.
Love you too, kid.
And y'all, that's going to wrap it up for episode 11. We appreciate you tuning in as always. Comments and likes are always appreciated. And in the comments, if you could do us a favor, put down past situations you maybe ran into as far as like dealing with boundaries and stuff like that, maybe where you didn't enforce them versus where you did. I'd be interested to hear back from you guys and just kind of see what your experiences look like. That gives us some insight into what you guys have dealt with. And we hope this episode resonated with you. So other than that, that's going to wrap it up. Pops, appreciate you as always. And tune in next week for the next episode.
All right, I appreciate you too, kid. Peace, y'all.
See you guys.